Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the premiere episode of Making a Beautiful Life with me, your host, Eden Valentine. Now, before I really get into this video, I just wanted to extend my gratitude to everyone who has been patiently awaiting for this series. I teased around this time last year that it would premiere in January, and I've just had setback after setback after setback. From technical issues, deciding to change the entire format of the series, to realizing that things that I was doing was just like not going to be sustainable in the long run. So it's just, I've worked out a lot of the kinks along the way, and I wanted to make sure that once the series did premiere that it was going to be cohesive, consistent, and, just a complete vision and not a complete mess. I just wanted the series to be good from the beginning. And another thing that I wanted to just mention before we kind of get into this video is throughout this footage, you're going to see my weight kind of fluctuate a lot because I have an autoimmune disorder. I'm not going to get into it. It's a lot of unnecessary information, just letting you know. This is not a project that takes a considerable amount of time. It's something you could probably knock out in a couple of days. But when filming, trying to create like a cinematic aesthetic, it can extend the period that it takes to complete a project. So yeah, it took me about a month to film the video, but honestly, it could have been knocked out. The whole project could have been knocked out in a couple of days if it was just all off camera. So speaking of weight, during the pandemic, I put on quite a bit of weight. I got up to 240 pounds. And none of my nice clothes really fit me anymore. All I really had were like super slouchy clothes, and everything that I own that's like really slouchy is typically covered in like paint and bleach spots. And it's just stuff that isn't really flattering. So yeah, I've decided that I was just going to make my own wardrobe for a few reasons. One of which is just morals and ethics. Another part of that is it is so hard for me to find things that I actually like. It is so hard to find things that not only I like, but also happen to be available in my size. So, because, all of these factors, I just decided to make my own clothes. So, on today's episode, I am making a chemise. Chemise? Not really sure how that's pronounced. So, you may be wondering to yourself, what is a chemise? Let's talk about it. The chemise is considered to be the original undergarment. It was worn by both women and men as a means to protect outer garments from sweat, oil, dead skin cells, and overall general human filth. The chemise was a relatively simple contained garment that could take a regular and quick washing, at least compared to more delicate or grand garments. The point of the chemise was to extend the lifespan of outerwear while maintaining some semblance of hygiene. But I wanted to make this chemise a little different. I wanted it to be kind of a convertible garment. I wanted to make it so I could wear it comfortably to bed, wear it underneath another garment, or wear it completely alone, looking cute, like I'm going to a picnic, almost like a little cottagecore vibe. Yeah. So to start off, you are going to need your measurements. You really don't need a lot of measurements though, just an FYI. This project is super simple pimple. So I measured from my shoulder to my elbow, from my elbow to my wrist. And then I measured from my pit to my elbow and from my elbow to my wrist. And then I measured the circumference of my wrist, the circumference of my elbow, and I didn't really do the circumference of up here because my elbow is literally the widest part of my arm because I'm built like that. Just a little different, very unique and rare, And then last but not least, I got the circumference of my chest. I did over the bust. So right where your nipples are, yeah. And I like to take a nice deep breath because we need room to breathe. Cool. While I was editing this video, I came to realize that I wasn't really efficiently showing you my creative process in drafting a pattern. So first I draw out my shoulder to elbow measurement, then my elbow to wrist measurement, and then I do my circumference measurements for my elbow and my wrist, and I cut those in half because this pattern will be cut on a fold. I just find that drawing out a 2D representation of my body first really helps me to visualize the pattern that I want to create and how that pattern is going to sit on my body. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of my creative process. Like, I knew I needed to make the sleeves significantly wider and even add length to get that slouchy, piratey look I'm going for. And to get that perfectly rounded shoulder, I just used a makeshift protractor with a string and a marker, my anchoring point being at the pit measurement. Then I used my French curve ruler to transition the curve into the pit of the pattern. So before we cut into our fabric, let's talk about my fabric choice. I am using a cotton muslin, but historically for a chemise, linen was used. Linen is breathable, it's fast drying, anti-static, antibacterial, hypoallergenic, softens and strengthens with every wash, and it's actually 2 to 3 times stronger than cotton. Linen is obviously superior to cotton, but linen is also significantly more expensive. And I currently don't have money like that, so I chose cotton. Here comes the fun part. Pinning. I hate pinning. Now this is going to be more of a do as I say and not as I do moment. I know, super hypocritical of me, but I'm just letting you know that there's really no shortcuts in sewing, and when you try to take a shortcut, it actually isn't a shortcut, it's just a detour. So if you just do things the right way the first time, that's the shortcut. Just an FYI, just trying to save you the trouble. No shortcuts in sewing. All right, so here you're going to see me cut this fabric. It hasn't been washed and I haven't ironed it. So whenever that fabric has like a wrinkle in it, it can actually cause the pattern, once you cut it out, to be like distorted, and it can really affect how things fit together later on. Now, personally, I was like, oh, this isn't a fitted garment, so I really wasn't that worried about it. But just an FYI, it is good practice to iron first and wash before cutting your fabric. So I went ahead and cut out my sleeves, painstakingly slow. I need to get my shears sharpened. Plus, I try not to be haphazardous when cutting. And another fun tip, definitely make sure you keep track of your pins. You do not want to accidentally stumble across one later. Then it was time to create channels for the drawstrings in my sleeves. I put drawstrings slightly below my elbow and wrist. I sewed one side of each channel down first, Then I ironed it over to get that crisp look. After that, I folded and ironed in the raw edges before sewing the other side of each channel down. Now, I seem to have lost some footage in this particular segment, so this is kind of like some demo footage, and we're going to talk about it as it plays. Cool. Before closing the sleeve, I decided to do a rolled hem at the wrist using my index fingernail as a measuring tool. And I went ahead and just stitched that down. Then to close the sleeve, I did a good side to good side. And because my sleeve does have drawstring channels, I skipped over each of those channels, but making sure to backstitch at the beginning and end of every series of stitches. Now, this is where the bust measurement comes into play. My bust is the widest part of my torso, so I'm basing the width of my fabric on that. So I had another 2 yards of this cotton fabric with a width of 59 inches. I went ahead and I cut that fabric the long ways, turning that 2 yards into 4. Anytime you want ruffles, be prepared because ruffles consume vast amounts of fabric in such a boastful and decadent manner. Now, I'm about to do a lot of work only to realize that I'm wasting my time. So I pinned my fabric to my dress form and began roughly sketching out the arm side. It's the armhole where you attach the sleeve. And if you're like, wow, Eden, you're so smart. I Googled it because I was originally just going to say the armhole. And I was like, there's got to be another word for this, like better terminology, something that just doesn't sound as goofy as armhole. So not only did I have to look up the word, but I also had to look up how to pronounce it. So let's just keep it real. I'm not that smart. I just have access to Google. I originally wanted something off the shoulder, so I was definitely making a lot of unique and abstract choices that I will later correct. I went ahead and did gathering stitches along the top of the sleeve and neckline. To do gathering stitches, lower the tension on your machine. It also helps to do a longer stitch length. I would also suggest doing 2 parallel gathering stitches, which I didn't do, but it does make things easier and add security. I was quite petrified that I was going to snap my thread and subsequently waste my time. Then to gather the fabric, you just want to pull your bobbin thread. Take your time, be gentle. When I pin, say in this instance, where the sleeve is bigger than the arm side, I start by breaking things down into quarters, then eighths, and so on and so forth until there are no more loose bits and my ruffles are evenly dispersed. So go ahead and stitch it all together, or don't because I'm still showing my failed attempt. So I had to get resituated because I was getting terribly uncomfortable because my bones hurt. So you guys may be even wondering why I'm showing you my failures. For me with this series, it is really important for me to not only show my successes, but also to show mistakes, because I want to normalize the learning process. I have seen so many people throughout my life who are so scared to try and learn new things because they're terrified that they don't know enough. They're terrified of making mistakes. And I just want people to not beat themselves up when they make a mistake. Use it as a learning opportunity, not a reason to bully yourself. You're learning. It's okay to learn. And just try to have fun in the process. So yeah, just be bold enough to try new things, to learn, and don't bully yourself in the process. That is so unnecessary. God, be nice to yourself. So yeah, once I realized that I was making a lot of mistakes and things just really weren't working out the way that I wanted, I seam ripped a lot. But afterwards, I began correcting my mistakes, starting by reorienting my arm side, because it was a creative decision that I should not have made. Should have made a very different decision. But you know what? What can you do? Not that. Definitely don't do that. But I learned. So yeah, I just had to reorient my arm side and things worked out a lot better from there. Shocker. So once I seam ripped, I began correcting mistakes by reorienting my arm side and adjusting the neckline. I redid the gathering stitches. I tied my threads once I was happy with this neckline, and I reattached the sleeves. For the drawstring channels, I drew and cut out 6 2-inch wide ribbons the length of my fabric, so 2 yards each. To figure out where I wanted my channels, I measured from my neckline to my underbust and from my underbust to my waistline. Then I put another channel in between those two. Then I cut out a 4-inch wide strip, folding and ironing it in half lengthwise, opening it up and folding the raw edges into the center, then ironing that as well. I use this bias tape to encase the raw edges of my neckline. So this was not really part of my original plan. My chemise turned out to be a little shorter than I would have liked, and I still had some of that extra fabric left over. It was 2 yards long and 59 inches wide. So I went ahead and cut that fabric into quarters lengthwise, sewing them together, leaving me with an 8-yard strip of fabric. And I went ahead and did 2 gathering stitches and just spent some time gathering my thoughts, my prayers, my pleas for it to end, because I hated gathering that, but you know what? The result is cute, so I'm not mad about it. So I pinned roughly 2 inches down from the bottom channel, using the width of my fingers to measure the distance, which took forever. I hate pinning. Once I was done pinning, I sewed the edge and cut off the excess fabric with pinking shears to combat the fraying of this fabric, because it frays a lot. Now, this was a learning experience. I should have gathered this down to 4 yards because that was the length of the hem of my bodice. I gathered it down to 2 yards, so I had to respread my ruffles till they reached 4 yards. This ruffle has 4 panels, so when pinning it to the bodice, I made sure 2 seams lined up with the side seams of the bodice, which would leave a seam in the center front and a center back. Breaking this down into quarters, then 8ths, and so on and so forth. Pun intended. While sewing the ruffles to the bodice, I made sure to readjust my ruffles when necessary. Funnily enough, it was easier sewing the ruffle to the bodice than sewing the hem of this ruffle. For some reason, my machine kept skipping stitches, and I messed with the machine settings. I just couldn't fix the problem, so I decided to do shorter stitch lengths and hope for the best. I also broke 2 needles in the process, The least complex part of this project, the irony, once again cutting excess fabric with pinking shears. So originally for the drawstrings in this garment, I was going to use a 100% cotton macrame type of string, but it really didn't slide through the channels very easily and it had a tendency to snap. So I decided to switch out that macrame for some 1/2 inch wide silk ribbon. And with the ribbon, I just went ahead and burnt the edges a little bit with a candle just to melt them so they wouldn't fray. To feed the ribbons through the drawstring channels, I just attached a safety pin to the ribbon and I fed it through the channels. Now for finishing touches. I felled down any raw edges inside of the garment with waxed thread. And I fed any loose top threads through a needle, feeding them to the inside of the garment. And now it's done. Are you ready for the reveal? So once again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who patiently waited for the premiere of this series. This series is going to be a monthly thing, 1 episode per month, because these take a really long time to film. But next month is going to be just kind of a sit down, talking, kind of therapy, a heart to heart, if you will. Because making a beautiful life is so much more than making a pretty dress. A beautiful life also has to do with the insides too. So that's what next month's episode is going to be focusing on. And I hope that you will join me for that. And if there is any type of project that you would like to see covered in this series or topic, go ahead and comment down below. I will gladly try and touch on those things in the future. Anyways, I hope that you found this video entertaining and educational. But most of all, I hope that this video inspires you to take on new projects and learn new things, because the whole point of this series isn't about me making my life beautiful. It's about inspiring you to make your life beautiful through your vision and on your terms. Okay, AC kicking on, love that. Anyways, I love you guys oh so very much. Remember that if you're going to believe in anything at all, you should believe in yourself.